Hello, gamers or not gamers, or whoever watches this for some reason. I'm Richard Arthur John Kivas of Deep Space and Dragons.
And I'm Karl, just Karl
Perfect. That was
of
what I
Deep
was
Space and
expecting you to do.
Dragons.
I nearly tricked you into doxing yourself, but it'd make the Karo tattoo enthusiasts have too much power.
If they can actually find me,
I'm not going to give them hints how to, but if I had to find you, I'm pretty sure I have strategies. So,
well, I
welcome
mean,
to Deep Space and
yeah,
Dragons.
yeah. Welcome to Deep Space and Dragons, which is not the show where we capture Karls and bring them in for questioning.
No, that's the other show that is for pay-per-view viewers only.
Our
Also,
patrons get
disclaimer.
access to
This is a
to.
comedy show, and nothing we say should ever be taken seriously. Just putting that out there,
Uh,
like ever. Except that time we absolutely made Dokapon Kingdom get remastered on the Switch.
well, I mean, we have manifested a few things, right? Like it's pretty good.
Although the SD Gundam game we manifested was very mid. I think we didn't manifest that one hard enough. Like, we manifested it, but we got like Monkey Kapod, where it's like, you want SD Gundam? Have a bad action shooter worse than Capsule Fighter. I'm like, how did you manage this? Capsule Fighter wasn't good. I'm just a nerd.
Uh, Capsule Fighter.
But yeah, what's
So,
new in the Carlverse?
well, I mean, a little bit of a doozy here.
Oh.
Well, no, okay, because last week we didn't post an episode.
They
We
don't
didn't
know
record an
that.
episode. I guess
They
I don't know
have
if we
no way
posted
of
or not.
knowing that. No one is checking our release dates.
Anyways,
We could be doing
so
April 1st right now. They would never know.
I have this bit about anti-disestablishmentarianism, um, which okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but my
No.
my understanding of what anti-disestablishmentarianism means is that you are against people who are against a given establishment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you support that establishment yourself.
Huh. That might actually be me. I had an interaction on social media earlier today where that may in fact be me.
Against people who are against the establishment, but not necessarily supporting the establishment yourself.
So I'm going to give a what's new with me quickly and then go back into your rant because it's super on point here.
Okay, okay.
So a mutual acquaintance of ours put a Facebook rant that's like said, copy this rant if you're brave enough, and it was a rant about the government and betraying veterans and yada yada yada. And for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, I decided to use the full breadth of my 5 years of training to write a systematic takedown about how dumb it was to be like, hey, democratically speaking, 51% of our country voted no candidate. Mathematically, you can just form a political party. The Rhinoceros Party had enough members to prove you could just organize a local community. What is the name of your alderman? What is the name of your mayor? Have you emailed them? Have you wrote them? Have you unionized? Have you collected a petition? Before you start going, we need to bring down the government. Have you bring down the system? Have you tried using the system at all? No, because you're copy pasting a Facebook comment and saying it's brave. The least brave act imaginable.
Okay.
And the original comment was probably generated on ChatGPT.
It probably.
So I'm like, before you start talking about we need a riot in the streets, have you tried calling your local representative? Like, or it's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, have you tried donating blood? That has record low numbers, and we need that. That would help veterans immediately, instantly.
Mm.
It would literally
Yeah.
save one of their lives, like immediately. And you don't have to you don't have to graffiti a single building to do it. So yeah, I think I actually am anti-disestablishmentarianism because it's like I don't actually like a lot of things. I've complained about politics at length. But what I don't like more is people being like, better throw a brick through an unrelated window. When I'm like, you haven't even tried to use the broken system. We know it's broken. But like, literally, enough people didn't vote that if they all just wrote Keanu Reeves as Shadow the Hedgehog, that would have won the election because of how few people voted. Like, there was enough undecided voters for Keanu Reeves to be prime minister right now.
That would be wild.
Anywho,
Okay, so
back to you. My segue was fun.
okay, so I I took a liking to this website known as Quora, which I will describe as discount Reddit. I don't know why I don't just go on Reddit, but I like to go through Quora.
Fair. No one should like to go on Reddit. You go on Reddit because chat searches have been replaced by AI bots that are just wrong about Pokemon facts. Ooh, I was so mad. So, where do you get the Earthquake TM in Pokemon Fire Red?
Ooh, I don't actually recall.
You get it from Giovanni, because he used to give you Fissure in Gen 1, and Fissure is stupid, so they gave him Earthquake instead.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm watching a Pokemon stream, and he's like, oh, I'm doing a Chikorita only run of Pokemon Fire Red.
Okay.
Because Chikorita got announced as a new starter, and there's a lot of Chikorita hate. It's like, nah, I'm going to beat this game just using Chikorita. I'm like, makes me think of Karl and Butterfree. I support this decision. So he's like, hey, chat, where's the Hex Earthquake anyway? And then it's like, I look at the chatbot, and it's like, chatbot, oh, it's in Silphco. And I'm like, no, it ain't. You're just wrong. Built-in auto AI responder that goes at the top of the search that just lies about Pokemon facts. I'm so mad. I'm like, this is an obviously clear, documented piece of history. There's no, subjectivity here.
Right.
It's been true since 1993, I think.
So, but anyways, I used to really like Quora because there would be some truly off-the-wall questions and answers, and occasionally it would show me cute comics, like more akin to like comic strips that you'd see in the newspaper, if you even remember what that is.
Being specifically, yes, we study those.
I guess a more broad would be like comics as in the same sentiment as like Peanuts or Garfield or Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, the funnies.
Yeah, the funnies.
I think that's actually the socially the correct term is if you refer to them as the newspaper funnies. That does distinguish them pretty perfectly.
Right. But there was one in particular that I really liked. It was called Pet Foolery. I probably could just find it on Instagram or whatever other service I might post it on.
Or a chat bot will lie to you and say it never existed and you're crazy.
But for whatever reason, I was getting it through Quora. But the algorithm...
It
has slowly decided that pretty much the only thing I want to see is this anti-Trump community, no more MAGAs or something like that.
Fair.
And my sentiment towards Trump as the president fairly well mirrors the rest of Canada at this point.
You don't want to be annexed? I mean, if you boil down all the subjectivity of it and just go to straight politics and then go past that to straight concept. Dude said we want to take your country and we said no. It's really hard. You know how I sometimes take politics out of here before I slip because I'm naturally a stanced person? If you're pro another country takes your citizenship away, you're bad at math. Because think about it. If you're like, oh, I want to be part of America, your vote just got cut in half by 100 times. You now just have less power to self-dictate your life. Because by population, you just lost the ability to sway policy. So no matter how much of a jerk or not jerk you may be, it is directly self-defeating to let a larger population base enter democracy with your smaller population base. Because you just have less power as a citizen.
Right.
This isn't about politics, it's pure numbers. It's just bad.
But this based on some of the answers that I've read, I would qualify this community on Quora as an echo chamber. And regardless of your political leanings, echo chambers are inherently bad.
Ooh, I got a fun algorithm side tangent, and I'll give it back to your main tangent.
Yeah, okay.
So, me and my brother watch drastically different things. And as a result of that, our algorithms across the apartment have been inverted politically.
Okay.
So I'll get hate campaigns for one party, and he'll get advertisements for the other. And it's so funny. Because, to go Canadian local politics right now, they wrote these ads before the Liberals decided their new candidate. So I'm getting these carbon tax Carney ads, right? That are airing at the same time that he abolished said tax. So they planned this attack on someone who in his third day in office already undermined the attack. And it'd be like saying, don't support King Piccolo. He released all the prisoners. And then the next day is like, actually put them all in a maximum security prison. You can't really go prisoner Piccolo anymore, can you? You lost. Too bad you dropped millions of dollars on this instead of donating to the local. Oh man, the number of lives political party budgets, advertising budgets could save if they're just spent on the constituents.
but so I mean, back to the original point, anti-disestablishmentarianism. It's like I really have a strong sentiment of anti-disestablishmentarianism towards this Quora community because I just don't like echo chambers, regardless of their political leanings. But that's not actually like this. I said this is a doozy because you might recall that I mentioned pet foolery was one of the newspaper funnies that I like to find on Quora. Now, it's published in a webtoon format, and so surprisingly, it's being posted on the webtoon app. Did the internet cut out, or
it was weird because my mic cut out, but you came in fine.
Okay.
I don't know how that works because I'm the internet. But I went, go on, and then I gasped a couple times for dramatic effect. It was beautiful.
Okay. Anyways, so that was when I realized that the Webtoon app is not exclusively Korean content. I don't know why I assumed it was.
So I've literally applied and interviewed with Webtoon as part of like my internship as like creative writing publishing.
Yeah.
And we could just get published on Webtoon if we so desired once you go to art school for a couple years. I have a lot of faith, by the way, in the amount of time it would take you. Like, if current adult Karl decided to like learn to write and draw in a structured format, you'd probably pick it up pretty quick. That's not related. So, that's just me having blind faith in you.
So I've been very happily reading this Pet Foolery, which is about this adorable kitten and her older brother, retired veteran war dog.
Wait, is that the one with like Brutus the dog? I think it is.
Yeah, Brutus and Pixie.
Oh yeah, no, I'm completely on board. Like, okay, I'm right there with you. Yes, I've never looked at the title of this comic, but it's definitely worked its way into my algorithm, possibly through your algorithm, like some sort of mnemonic virus.
Right. I mean, it's just like this nice, wholesome beacon of happiness in what is otherwise a bleak and dark internet.
You know what's funny? It's like literally I just go outside, the sun's shining, the birds singing. I did like a laundry all day yesterday. I'm like, it's ironic to come for me, but I think I need less screen time. Like I literally have a console set up in the living room so I don't open news windows on the other screen.
But then I was like, I've been reading this Paranoid Mage series on Webtoon, and they just recently posted the season finale on Paranoid Mage on Webtoon. And so I looked it up, and apparently it's based on 5 books. Paranoid Mage, Renegade Mage, Heretic Mage, and I don't remember the last 2, but I'm currently reading Heretic Mage because I've read the first 2.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize, and there were a few clues, but I didn't realize that Paranoid Mage was not Korean manhwa. It's actually written by a North American author.
Oh man, we are culturally insensitive on this channel.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, it's hard for me to articulate what the difference actually is, but most Korean manhwa have there's something about the art style and there's something about the writing style that make it very clear that they're not by a North American author. Like I say, it's hard to articulate what it is that I'm sensing, but there's something there.
Possibly.
So it's like, well, there was another series that's on Webtoon. It's called Of Swamp and Sea. And just looking at it, I was like, okay, this is North American. I can tell by the art style. Then I start reading it. It's like, okay, this is North American. I can tell by the writing style. It's just there's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's something that clearly separates North American authors from Korean authors from Japanese
Oh,
authors.
the
Like
Japanese one
I'm
is a
not,
deep hatred of fat people and such baked in sexism that even when you invert it, you end up still being sexist.
but
Looking
like I
at you,
say,
a new
they're
chapter
there.
of Bort. Ugh. That's not going to make it into the episode. I just had to just be like, the new chapter of Bort sucks. And I'm just going to leave that at that.
But like so, there were a few clues. The North American names in Paranoid Mage. The lack of reference to any Asian geography, like Jeju Island or Mount Fuji.
No
Like it's like
ants.
yeah, no ant monsters.
I do wonder if that's like a cultural thing or something. Because I'm like, I've seen that happen a few times. I guess in Terraformers it was cockroaches, but still.
But I was surprised. And have you ever heard of the website Royal Road?
No.
Uh, um, I'm not exactly sure what its deal is, but all of these Paranoid Mage books are released on Royal Road, and you can buy physical paperback copies if you want from Amazon, which I am considering doing. But right now,
Need to buy
I
Canadian authors because something politics.
right. But in the course of Paranoid Mage, the protagonist he doesn't know anything
Such
about
a
magical
doozy. This
society.
is like such a tangent. I mean, I stopped a sub tangent, but like your
Well,
point is like looking at like a tesseract where it's like folding in on itself, and I'm like, I know there's a point, but I just don't know how you would get there.
we're almost to the end here.
I almost believe you.
But so there's a point in Paranoid Mage, the protagonist doesn't know anything about magical society, and he's talking to a healer, and she's like, "Oh, to pass this test, I need an offensive attack, an offensive move, I guess,
Yeah.
not attack, but an offensive move." And he's like, "Well, I mean, based on mundane biology, if you apply your healing magic, you could like put neurochemicals out of whack and just like knock someone out by upping the right chemical in their brain
So
or
pause.
whatever,
I have to
causing blood
vital
clotting."
tangent something because it's really funny to me. There's an
Okay.
anime called Drifters where each character is based on a mythological figure's Fate Stay Night style, but it was hyper-violent Helsingi. And
Oh,
there's a
yeah,
character
okay.
who's Jesus, and he just walked up and turned all the blood in your body into wine, or healed you so much that you died of cancer.
Oh, exactly.
You're like, yeah, I see
And
that. Yeah, the Jesus murder method. I'm like, all right, good. We're on the same page again.
right. And then she almost gets labeled as a heretic because the powers that be don't want anyone to realize that healing mages can actually just kill anyone by touching their mana and just done.
Yeah, fair enough.
Um,
Clerics are the most busted class.
uh, but quite within the context, that's just the wrong way to use healing magic.
It is ridiculous that clerics get heavy armor and martial weapons and are full spellcasters. Like, I'm a wizard in plate mail is some nonsense. Anywho.
But okay, so then the final tangent to jump on is that I was reading Paranoid Mage, like, oh, the wrong way to use healing magic. Oh, wasn't there a show on Crunchyroll called "The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic"?
No.
And I was suddenly very curious what exactly this show would constitute as the wrong way to use healing magic.
Oh no.
Are you familiar with the show?
Yes.
Have you actually like watched a significant portion of it?
Like the first 3 episodes before ADHD kicked in.
Right. Well, see,
I think made it through the whole thing.
I was invested in discovering what it figured was the wrong way to use healing magic, and
they reached the conclusion of being Baki.
No. See, that's not the wrong way to use healing magic. That's a sensible way to use healing magic. To work out until your muscles are too sore to continue, and then heal them so you can work out some more. So you can, like, it's just like that. That is a sensible way to use healing magic.
Sakura was such wasted potential. I'm sorry, but Sakura could just have done that.
Like, hey, so I'm like, hey, well, obviously that's not the wrong way to use healing magic. Why is this even the show? And then his commander gets attacked by a demon, and the demon summons blades of wind around her, and he's like, "Ah, you can't get out of my wind prison because you'll get cut to shreds." And then she just walks through because she has healing magic, and she just heals herself as she walks through the blades of wind.
Best way to play a
And I was
cleric
like,
in
oh,
D&D, by the way, is just to heal yourself, never your party members, and just do it to do ridiculous flexes. Like, you fall off that 100-story cliff, get back up, snap your legs back together, and continue on.
right. But finally, the 11th episode, and there's only 13 episodes in the first season. In the 11th episode, it actually comes clear the wrong way that he uses healing magic is he is strong enough that he can literally shatter a boulder with his fist.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going full strength, you can't really safely use against an opponent you don't want to kill. And he's not exactly a pacifist, but he's also that 17-year-old student from modern day Japan who doesn't really want to
Have
kill
you
anyone.
seen the new season of Invincible or any season of Invincible?
I watched the first season. I haven't watched any of the subsequent
So,
seasons.
not to spoil too much, but there's a scene in Invincible where he punches someone so hard he breaks his arm on the guy's face completely and then starts headbutting.
Okay.
It was the most hardcore thing I've ever seen. Like, cast punch is cool. Shattering your fist into bone fragments to embed the bone fragments in someone is cooler.
Fair. So I don't know if I would necessarily say this is cool, but it turns out the wrong way to use healing magic is you imbue your fist with healing magic so that when you punch someone with enough strength to shatter stone, they get the feeling of all of the impact and all the pain, but you immediately heal their wounds so they don't actually have any lasting damage.
You know, that's such a Richard ass way to fight. Like, could you not picture me doing that where I'm like, yeah, I hit you as hard as I can, but heal you at the same time so you just pass out from the pain? That's such a me move. Like, I got game respect game.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's like
I
you hit someone
don't
with a
really,
sack of oranges logic.
I don't really. The isekai is a worthless framing device, in my opinion, and
Yeah,
I don't
make
think
a
it added
fantasy
anything to the
world on
story.
World Anvil. It's not that hard.
Yeah, but when it finally, almost an entire season through, got to him using healing magic in the quote unquote wrong way, it was actually moderately interesting.
Well, that's kind of my entire angry rant with the genre is that, like Freerun, for example, you could just draw a map, like pour some coffee on a paper and outline it with a pen, name
Mm.
some things, and not have people bring in their high school drama. You could just set your series there. Like,
Right.
Delicious in the Dungeon, it's great. It could have been an
Mm.
Ikasai and had him come from the real world and be a monster eater, but he gains nothing from that. And I think that's my problem with the genre as a whole, is you gain nothing from character development, plot, or setting from Ikasaiing a high school student, because they're not ever
Mm.
bringing anything with it. There was one Ikasai that was called Tokyo Gate, where a portal just opens in Tokyo and the military goes in.
Okay.
That Ikasai was great because they killed a dragon with a rocket launcher and were like giving
Mm.
rations to like the peasants. And then at some
Mm.
point they have like elven archers holding RPGs to shoot down a dragon. And I'm like, yes, you brought the premise. Ikasai is only interesting if what you're bringing from the mundane world does something, right? Like being a normal person wasn't helpful to the plot in
Mm.
Wrong Way to Healing Magic. If he was just a dude from that setting, it would have worked just as well.
Yeah.
That's my entire
I
problem
did.
with it. Like solo leveling, you can argue that, yeah, well, solo leveling isn't an Ikasai because, I'm like, yeah, instead it's just for some reason their world's running on D&D rule, not D&D rules, WoW rules for some reason. Meh.
I mean, there's a bit more nuance than that. They do eventually explain the system, and it's
Bad.
a reasonable explanation. But regardless, I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Anywho, that isn't the topic of this week's episode. That was like 2 weeks ago's episode? I don't know, find it. Use Google. We believe in you. Remember when we used to promo things on this podcast? Oh, what a time. But now I'm like, nah, my writing's got too much better. I don't want people to read my first novel. Then they'll hold me to that standard.
Anyways, what's new with me is that I've been doing a lot of reading of Paranoid Mage because I highly recommend the series,
Nice.
especially seeing as you can get it on Royal Road for free.
That is a good
But
price.
and then also that I watched the entire first season of The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic, and the isekai portion doesn't really do it for me, but
So I
once
also
it
kind
actually
of recently
into it,
watched a terrible Igasai, even though this is not our Igasai episode. So I watched
right?
the Red Power Ranger reincarnated in another world for a few episodes.
Okay,
And it's literally, you watch an episode of Power Rangers at the start, like, they're fighting the evil empire, they make their Megazord, they blast the guy, kill the evil empire, and guy falls in a portal. He's in this new world. But he gotta keep his Power Ranger stuff? So, like, an evil golem appears, he just morphs himself into a Power Ranger and lightning punches them, and everyone's just like, what is happening? And I'm like, it's
okay,
funny because it's like, yeah, the Red Power Ranger would be great at being in a fantasy setting. And he's like, yeah, I kind of low key love it here. And I'm just like, oh man, the sheer peppiness of a Power Ranger instead being a depressed high school student was enough to be like, I'll give this a few episodes because this is fun. It's like trying to explain to the wizard, you have to do the dramatic pose to make the thing work. And the wizard's like, that makes literally no sense. And I'm like, oh man, this is such a dumb
uh,
mashup that I'll allow it.
do you think that that time I was reincarnated as Yamcha was a decent
So that might have been
series?
one of the strongest Dragon Ball series, but also requires so much meta knowledge that it's practically useless. So, like, I'm playing Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, for example, where they literally the game mechanic was branching plot point timeline things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best thing they could have did, but they didn't, is they should have put in a Yamcha campaign that was that manga. Like, that would have been such a good use of that to open with like yeah, you're Yamcha, and then to go through all the Yamcha story missions and like where the story branches have it branch like the manga did, and then end with the Beerus cutscene. Like, it was fun, and it would make a great side story in a video game. But
Mm.
you know my rule. Like, I cap things at like a 7 out of 10 if you had to read another series to read this one. Like, you lose points. It's like, yeah, this was the best Dragon Ball Z spinoff. Because it's fighting against Bojack. Or the Dragon Ball Super manga. And I'm like, yeah, no, this was probably better.
Uh, but speaking of reincarnation, I believe our actual topic for this episode is lives in video games. Yes,
Oh man,
no?
we so could have aside this entire episode. We're like at the halfway point. And I like had other things about the what's new with me, but we just didn't really get to them.
Well, okay, I guess sorry, I did kind of skip over what's new with you because you inserted a rant in the midst of mine.
Well, yeah, my rant was great. So instead of giving what's new with me, because our audience just doesn't get that information now, instead I'm going to quote a conversation that happened 3 minutes before this podcast started.
Okay.
So I'm sitting in my living room, drinking some water, hanging out with Mr. Meeks like you do. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about Karl to my roommate like I do. And he's like, Karl doesn't exist, right? He's imaginary. And I just think to myself, and I say to him, Karl is literally the person that I have the most evidence of existing of anyone on this planet. Or people have listened to 90 plus episodes of a podcast where I talk and then there's pure silence. And then I'm like, talk again. And the idea that there is no Karl. What a wild trip this podcast would be with its massive, long, uninterrupted moments of silence, followed by me making a quip or two. Like,
Well,
if
I mean,
anyone in my life was imaginary, you would be by far the most entertaining for this context alone.
I mean, assumably you're speaking my lines, but I mean,
No, it's
you never
silence. It's
know.
just me nodding my head right now.
They can't even see you nodding your head.
Exactly. They just, all they hear is me nodding my head up. Blink noise. Exactly. Like, that is a truly funny bit. I
Well, I
thought you might
mean,
enjoy that.
hopefully I actually exist.
Yeah, and then for me it's like graduate soon, master's programs, chatting with profs, fun's preparing for future stuff, but like none of it's really podcasty things because I don't like
Okay,
to gloat about things till I actually have them in writing, so I'm just gonna be vague and sneaky about it.
okay, but I do have a question for you since you didn't actually directly answer my question when we were texting back and forth.
Nice.
Can you take electives that would directly apply towards a future master's program.
So what's interesting is I was talking with my prof about it, and how it would work is you can get electives swatched with other school things if you have like the permission of program coordinator level person. But it's not that it
Okay.
would reduce or affect my course load, because the master's is pretty locked in of like 3 courses and then a big scale project.
Mm.
And then like a thesis, da 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 da. But what you can do is say I had an elective that was literature. And I'm like, actually, I really
Yeah.
want to take this grant writing class because I'm a horribly boring person. It's
Mm.
possible for the person to be like, okay, I'll let you take that in place of an elective. So,
Okay.
but the other option is I just do one master's program and then the other afterward.
Right. I mean, that kind of just makes sense.
But I was literally talking about it like to a professor that, oh yeah, if you really wanted specific courses, you could just ask to take those courses as your electives.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, if you have a master's in something, let's use fake ones. If you have a master in baking versus a master's in cooking, and you lose your job because you went with baking instead of cooking, that's almost on you at that point for being bad at selling yourself. Because it's like, it should be able to be like, but it's a master's in a culinary art.
Right.
So, yeah. I can't go into particulars because I'm still like in limbo, accepting offers, negotiating, playing coy.
Right.
But I do fully intend to go into a master's program in the fall. I think I could share that on this podcast and they can congratulate me for my success. And I'm not going to give any further information until I's are dotted and T's are crossed and what have you.
Mm.
But yeah, that's pretty much all that was new with me, was weighing various program options, writing a book, doing school assignments, having to teach a class as part of a class, which is the whole thing.
Having to teach a class as part of a class.
So one of the classes I'm doing right now, which I can talk about, is Pedagogy of Creative Writing, which is learning to teach creative writing to people.
Okay.
Our assignment is they put us in a group, we write a lesson plan, and then we have to go find a group of people and then teach them something.
Okay.
So like a bunch of people went to their like former high school classrooms to teach a creative writing lecture.
Huh.
My group has booked a thing at a library to do like an adult learners lesson because there's less chance I'll get myself canceled there.
Right.
Because my one F-bomb an episode rule doesn't apply to 6th graders, turns out. Crazy how that works. And it's like,
I see how that works.
on one hand, that's an intimidating ass assignment. Go find a group of people and teach them a thing, good luck. But also, for like the kind of like master's program teaching assisting things you typically end up doing, it's like extremely relevant practice for me.
Right.
So I welcome the challenge, but also it's like, then there's logistics. Because they're not going to let you come teach when you would normally have class, because life just isn't that easy.
Right.
I mean, they might, but that's not how it worked out. So it's like, with my like final like 4 weeks of my degree left, what's new with me? Schoolwork. Yeah, that's about right. And some game stuff that'll come up when we get back to our actual topic. So, lives and gamings. I've prepared a statement, but I refuse to do research because that's my day job.
Right.
So it's like today I literally went through like 10 academic articles and wrote summaries. So for my podcast, I'm just going to pull random crap and see what happens. I'm going to say the first video game to use quarters in place of lives was pinball.
Was pinball.
Because pinball, you didn't need electricity really for a pinball machine. But the idea was you turned a coin into a number of stocks, and then when those stocks died, you lost the stock. And that was probably the first life in gaming. Because most sports use a timer for points instead of when you run out of points, you lose. Because they want the game to last long enough. Where any game that has a coin slot, no, you don't want the game. You want the game to last exactly long enough that they give you more money.
Right. I was going to say that, or I am going to say that old school arcades, which have mostly fallen out of style, are probably the source of lives in contemporary games because, like you say, you turn a quarter into a certain number of lives, and then your goal is to get a high score before you lose all your lives.
It's interesting, so I was watching a good friend of mine do a Dragon's Lair playthrough on Wii. Are you familiar with Dragon's Lair at all?
Sounds familiar, but I don't know.
So Dragon's Lair was early Laserdisc technology. And the idea was the game played animation cutscenes and gave you a QuickTime event of you had to push one of 4 directions or the sword button. And if you successfully
Okay.
completed it, it either played a video clip of you moving to the next room, or you like being
Hmm.
squished by an ooze, or your flying horse flying into a wall, or what have you. And the game was
Okay.
literally you gave it money, and then the game would just be like, push the red button or die. Haha, you don't get more story. And that was like its
Okay.
entire business model.
Huh.
It was literally like it was just one QuickTime event, and you had to do enough consecutive QuickTime events before you had to give them more money.
Hmm. Interesting.
So like on the notion of lives is personally I believe lives are trading time for progress.
Hmm.
And some games just do it badly and other games do it well. But I do
Hmm.
think like there is a place in modern gaming for lives in some games, but it's changed shape a lot. So, one thing I was prepared to talk about this episode was Hades, you only get one life. And when you
Right.
die, you get more story, you get more power ups, you roguelike, and then you go through it again. Which
Hmm.
the roguelike is like the modern arcade game of it's an arcade game, but you get to actually keep progress between each play.
Makes sense.
But Hades still has lives, they just haven't yelled death defiance, and you keep going from the spot and you don't respawn from a screen. Because a lot of games are lives let you retry within a reasonable distance, and then a game over
Right.
puts you back to like the start of the game. Like your
Hmm.
Mario games are the life lets you retry from a checkpoint, and then the game overs you. And then they're like, actually, nah, it's just going to say, here we go again, and give you a timer to taunt you.
Well, see, what actually inspired this episode was that relatively recently, the Nintendo Switch added Donkey Kong Land 1, 2, and 3 to the Game Boy emulator for the Switch Online.
Do I have you on my family plan? I feel like I should.
You definitely have me on your family plan. Uh,
Nah,
I I think you might have kicked Aaron off the family plan, or he lost it somehow. He was saying he doesn't have access anymore, but
I'm fine with that.
that's
One of the two of you buys me things once in a while.
yep,
Like,
that's true.
because I did kick off some like random coworkers and things off the family plan, and I think I like didn't know which one was his email address, and I'm like, whose email address is this? I'll clean it up. My logic was if anyone cared about it, they would message me,
Fair enough.
and I'd just add them back on if there was space.
Anyways,
Because I need
but
all. No, I need to be clear. I need all 8 slots always filled on that, so I'm getting maximum dollar value from Nintendo.
mm,
It's like how I have to use every penny of my student benefits every term, even if I don't need more glasses. It's a concept thing.
right. But so Donkey Kong Land um, is exactly what you described, where you have a certain number of lives. If you die, you can restart from a checkpoint. If you get a game over, you have to restart from the last time that you saved. Which saving modern games basically hardly even use the save function. It's like everything just auto saves all the time.
So, on that note, so I've recently picked up like every Mega Man game ever made for $5 on a sale.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the X Collection, the Classic Collection, Mega Man 11, and the ZX Collection. No Battle Network,
Mm-hmm.
sadly. But like
Right.
the old Mega Man games were interesting because they used lives for something really specific, and I don't know if it was deliberate.
Oh.
So, Mega Man games like to kill you to the point where on the
Mm-hmm.
recent collections, they quick key map the rewind button. In Mega Man
Mm.
1, they're like, yeah, no, you can just use a bumper to rewind time if you're playing the collection on collection mode, because who's beating Mega Man? But, like, how it worked out in practice for, like, Mega Man X, a game I really liked, is if you make it to the boss with a life left, the boss kills you once, and the life lets you respawn at the boss. So it's like, if you get respawned halfway through the level, that's kind of handy. But really, the goal is I want to make it to this level with at least one extra life, so when I fight the boss and he kicks my ass, I know his pattern for the rematch.
Right.
So for those games, it's like, okay, the point of the lives are like, how many retries do you get against the boss after beating the stage?
Mm.
And the Mega Man X ones are like, no, we're not giving you like infinite rewind. We already gave you a dash button and a charge gun. You don't need more pity
Okay.
from us. But like, it's funny because the early Mega Man games, I have no problem using the time rewind because I hit a level in original Mega Man where I got like soft locked myself, where even though I could rewind time freely, I still couldn't beat the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I needed
Well,
ammo for a specific special weapon to make a jump, and I didn't. I had used that weapon earlier. It's like, hell, sucks to be you. You just can't beat the stage now because we don't care. We're normal Nintendo. Get good, scrub.
um, but so like the concept of lives, I think Mario, like Super Mario games, are almost the only game that actually use lives as we've described here, where it's uh you have a set number of lives. You can restart from a checkpoint if you die. If you lose them all, you have to restart from the beginning of the level. Um,
So it's like
and I,
it's changed shape a lot over the years.
mm,
So to kind of give like a different example is for lives in like the classic way. For something like let's take Dark Souls.
yeah,
Dark Souls is when you die, your max HP is cut in half, and you have to go pick up your corpse.
right.
But their actual life system isn't lives, it's you get 3 flasks you get to use to heal up.
Mm,
So it's like instead of you getting lives, they super limited your healing.
mm.
And then like Armored Core, for example, you get 1 life. When you die, you replay your stage, it blew you up. But they'll let you like respawn from where a life would normally bring you to a checkpoint. You just get to keep respawning at the checkpoint, rebuild your mech in the new Armored Cores. Because new games be like that.
Right.
But also, if a game has no lives at all, it loses a lot of its intensity. Like, even if it doesn't, if it only just makes you restart the fight you're in, mortality is kind of important.
Mm.
Like Monster Hunter, for example, is its life system is mean because your party has a shared pool of lives, and when you run out, you lose, and the game calls you bad, and then you get wheeled away on a corpse board because you suck.
Okay, but so like Yoshi's Woolly World and the other Yoshi games, um, do you think they benefit from not having lives then, or do you think that they become too easy?
So Yoshi's Woolly World and a lot of Kirby games too have a
Mm.
weird thing is action platformer and collector platformer or cozy platformer have different goals. So,
Mm.
a cozy platformer, your goal is to find the secrets.
Right.
And Yoshi's Woolly World, Kirby, Epic Yarn do a particularly good job of you feel smart. They're like sometimes they're puzzles and sometimes they're blowing the mic to have Kirby blow on a flower to then
Right.
spin a
Right.
gem. But you're not really caring about the intensity in that situation because the fear of
Mm.
death isn't where you're getting the adrenaline. You're instead getting dopamine, not adrenaline, from woohoo! I used fire on the vines to get the cake. Yay, I'm
Mm.
great. But then later stages of Kirby are like, actually, no, your lives matter because we're going to have you fight the god of the multiverse, and you will suffer. Kirby has a weird blend.
Right.
So lives, I think, only matter if the punishment is proportional. I don't think games should really have lives anymore at all.
Mm.
Like for that Monster Hunter example where you blocked the death laser with your shield and I died from the cold air from standing behind you.
Right.
The live system didn't make us feel good. Because it's like, we were
Right.
already getting less rewards, but it's like, no, you've just lost your time. That may have prevented us
Mm.
from continuing to play that game at all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the end of our time trying to play through Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate together.
Because in that
At
game,
least I think so. Yeah.
yeah, because that game, we lost lives not because of skill, but because of gear score. So it didn't
Well,
feel like
the worst thing was that was an extremely high skill move to like put up my shield,
and
block the
roll
ice
behind
laser, and
it,
have you
like,
jump behind it. And then it just failed.
yeah, the game was just not at our level. It would have worked in Sword Art, and we'd both still be alive and not dead in Sword Art. But yeah, like, so for modern, like, I think I was telling in our geometry episode that triangle strategy put in the mechanic where when you lose a fight, you keep your experience.
Right.
Where Fire Emblem, you just get game overed.
Mm.
Fire Emblem Three Houses kind of had lives because you could rewind time 5 times in a fight. So if you lost,
Oh.
you got to rewind a number of turns.
Mm.
Which is like, oh, you added lives to a game where it was, if your main character died, game over. But really, in Fire Emblem, is if someone you liked died, it was game over because you just soft reset like a little punk.
I mean, that's definitely true. Super Nintendo Fire Emblem is. I definitely had a few characters where I was like, no, I got to save scum this because I like this character too much, and also like you invest a lot of time and energy into uh, the relationships between the characters for the second half of the game, and then
right?
if one of them dies, it's like all for naught.
So it's really, and then like you need to get them to the end to actually see their ending with their like
Mm,
dialogue and such. So they added lives to it, and it's like between triangle strategies, you get experience every time, or Fire Emblem, you get 5 rewinds because if you get an unlucky roll and get crit twice and die, you would save scum. So instead of having you save scum, you can use one of your 5 retries to rewind as many turns as you like. It's actually
mm,
like cutting down the time boot up effort of the save scumming you would normally do.
right.
And it's also like if you use up all 5 and the character still dies, I found that like I was less willing to save scum at that point. I'm like, okay, I already tried this 5 times; they're just dead to me. I'm sorry. The lore has determined that they don't get to live through today, and I think that was good. But then you get to like
Mm,
the Mega Man collections, or the Sonic Origin collection did this. So the Sonic Origin collection just removed lives completely,
right.
and wherever a life was, you instead got a coin box that gave you coins to spend on like background music and artwork and things.
Okay.
And they just got rid of lives because like no, you just restart at a checkpoint.
Do you think that improved the overall experience then?
It did because the game was hard enough that the game was still hard. So it's like
Mm,
if you die, you went back to a checkpoint, which was already
mm,
relatively punishing. And like the boss of the game took me like 30 tries because you had to beat 2 stages on the one go. And
mm,
I absolutely wouldn't have gained anything having to occasionally, after 5 losses, to give me a title screen and put me back even earlier.
right.
So it's like not having the game over screen meant the game could be harder, but I could practice the part I was bad at more. So like Mega Man Zero Collection as well did away with the lives and had a checkpoint system where instead you went to the last checkpoint, and at any time you can push
Mm-hmm.
a button to warp to the checkpoint. What was really cool about that game specifically is the game had a system where it counted how many times you got hit, how many enemies you killed, and how fast you beat the stage to give you a letter grade.
Right.
And on a max letter grade is the only time you got the special weapon from the boss.
Mm,
So the game became a different game. My first time playing that as a kid, it was like, I need to beat this, and this is desperate and hard, and I'll use every resource I have. In the
right.
collection, it was, I need a flawless every room, because I get to just retry this section until I beat it like an absolute badass. So
Mm,
I'm getting these S ranks that I never would have got in the original design, because I just wasn't that good. Because I'm like, oh, I can make sure to get this jumping puzzle down perfect, and literally jump
mm,
slash backflip, catch in the air, and then do the next chunk. I'm like, yeah, no, I feel
right.
awesome in this game because I gotta like you'd hit points where I'm like, I beat this boss, but if I click the button to rewind, I can beat it better to get the bonus thing.
Mm,
So it's like that specific design of we give you a letter grade based on how well you do, paired better with infinite lives. Because if you get game overed when you die, you're not going to willingly die to make sure you clear the room better.
mm.
So for that game, lives were a downside.
That makes sense.
Because even as I was saying when I was playing through the classic Mega Man games, the design note of the lives are like, oh, you have to repeat the stage if you don't do it, was only a good design note when you had to one game with 8 stages to last you a year. Now I want to beat a Mega
Mm,
Man game in one sitting. So because I have
right.
20 of them, I don't need it to be a 3-day endeavor. Because I have 20 of them for $20.
Mm.
So here's
So
another.
essentially, what you're saying is that lives were an artificial way to increase replayability because you basically had to replay stages more often if you got that game over.
Correct. Like, it's weird as I'm not so much against lives as I'm against game overs.
Mm.
So in a recent game, I was playing Metaphor Rotanzio something or other, which was the new Persona type game that wasn't Persona, it was medieval and you're on an election tour bus that had legs. It's a sweet RPG. Great game.
Okay.
So, Pokemon never had game overs.
Mm-hmm.
You lost some cash and then went back to the Pokemon Center.
Right.
Pokemon caught on really well. If Pokemon actually gamed you over, I don't think it would have caught on well. I think if
Mm,
you died to that first badge and it sent you back to Pallet Town, and you had lost any Pokemon you caught between that and your last save. Because in theory, Pokemon is the most save scummable game of all time. Because you can save at
right.
literally any point and just
Hmm.
reload. People picked up on that pretty early into the franchise of, oh, I'll just save in front of Moltres. You
Right,
never
right.
expect to die in Pokemon. So if Pokemon had permadeath where you just got game overed and you had to reload your last save, and you just die to a random Graveler in the cave, you would
Mm,
stop that game. If you were halfway through Mount Moon and game over, you'd never play that game again. But it sends you back to the Pokemon Center, and you keep your experience, and you keep anything you
mm,
caught. If you had lost every Pokemon you caught from that lat before you died, that only has to happen once before you'd give up on that game. So, the Persona
mm,
games have always been dick move games, where enemies will literally have attacks that just kill you, and then you just get game over and have to load your last save. And the first time it
okay.
happens, you're never prepared for it. I was
Mm,
like 3 hours in the middle of like the fourth dungeon, Persona 5, and an enemy just cast Charm on all of my party members, so I didn't get any turns, and I just died before I could do anything.
ah,
And then it gamed me over
that,
and sent me back 2 hours of my life. And I never
sheesh.
beat that game because I'm like, no, screw you, game. Why in 2024 would I need to manually save? So this Metaphor game, which was like a runner-up for Game of the Year and most things, or one Game of the Year for some things, I think accidentally fixed this problem.
Yeah?
So it looks like it was designed to not have auto-saving because there's physical save
Okay.
points. But the game
Right.
auto-saved whenever you picked an item up off the ground,
Huh.
and auto-saved like before bosses. And I think it was to stop like
Okay.
a duping glitch or something. Like I don't think they meant to do this.
Mm,
So the game would still occasionally just kill you from bad luck Persona style. But in
hmm.
a game where there's items in every room on the ground, it would only put you back one fight at most.
Right.
And I think that saved the game. Because in a JRPG, now, if you lose to a boss, which you're expected to lose to the boss the first time to learn their strategy,
Right.
and it puts you right before the boss, or if you die to a random mimic chest and it puts you to the last room, you keep
Hmm.
playing it. If its original design was you can only save at these save points, I don't think it would have won any awards, and I don't even think they realized that they accidentally fixed this. Because it doesn't feel like a developer thought we should make sure it saves every item so you respawn more frequently. To me, anyway,
Mm,
if it auto saves because you picked an item bomb off the ground, it tells me that was more about not duplicating the item than a deliberate design choice.
right.
And it made the
Well,
game immensely better for it.
so then are you against replacing lives with the save point system? Because, I mean, it does seem like most games have, in fact, done away with the save points.
I agree within reason. So most games now just autosave on you.
Hmm.
Which the trick is if your game autosaves, you can't also have save points. Like if you're good at
Right.
creating an autosaving game, autosave it. Like Baldur's Gate
Hmm.
sometimes will be like, oh, when was my last autosave? I only really save this game when I go to turn it off. Not great.
Right.
Baldur's Gate was just good at literally everything else, so whatever.
Right, right.
But like you have to space it and you have to understand what's time consuming in your game. So for
Mm,
example, the final boss of Metaphor, Refantasio, had 3 phases.
okay.
After losing because it has a bullshit instant kill attack in the 3rd phase,
Hmm.
like JRPGs are one to do for some reason. Which, by the
Hmm.
way, just have text say in 2 turns an attack's coming or something. Don't just kill your entire guy off. That's some bullshit. It sent me back far
Right.
enough that I ended up dropping the difficulty to just see the ending.
Ah.
That's bad game design to be like, oh, you fought this entire game on this difficulty, but we are so annoying at the end that for the sake of time, I'm like, no, just put a save point between the 2 phases of the boss.
Right.
If you're going to give him an instant kill you attack after 20
Hmm.
minutes of fighting him, don't.
Right.
It's also weird game design note. I don't like bosses in games getting stronger as the fight goes. It's a weird
Mm,
JRPG trope where it's like, no, you don't have them get stronger as you fight. You have them get weaker as they fight. Because then you're winning. Like, let's take Pokemon, which is the most successful JRPG of all time by like a lot.
Mhm.
When you're fighting Lance, yeah, his Pokemon get higher level, but he has less of them because you're winning. If you're fighting
Right.
Lance and you beat him, so instead, his Dragonite gets an attack that attacks all of your bench Pokemon and drops them to 1 HP for some reason, you would just call
Mm.
bullshit. Pokemon's big design note is it was fair. Anything the enemies could do to you, you could do to them.
Right.
That's just good game design.
Mm.
Although most Digimon games were in fact better than Pokemon games, but that's a whole other debate. Pokemon's put out some garbage recently. I don't retract my statement. But yeah,
Well, so then I guess the other question is, do you think that lives do have a place in modern video games?
I think they do as Death's Defiance perks. So, for someone who plays games like Armored Core and occasional Dark Souls type things, and Monster Hunter specifically, I'm going to give, you need to be able to lose, or else you're just matching X till you win. Like, as we bring up in D&D a lot, you have to have the fear of death to hit that sweet spot where you get invested.
Right.
And that fear of death is important. But I think that lives have changed. Instead of it being, a life lets you retry from 10 minutes ago and a game over restarts your entire game. It's moving more towards death defiances. Like Hades' death defiance of, hey, when you drop to 0, you get back up twice. I think is a better way to lives to go. Right now, it's still you have to like manually heal. Like the Estus Flask mechanic of you get 3 or 4 healings the game just gives you as a substitute life system is flawed because you can still get cheap shotted and lose. But having 3 lives while hunting a Rathalos, for example, means that like you can screw up 3 times before you lose, and then your blood pressure gets really high near the end of the fight. But I'm not a fan of wasted time. To be completely wasted in my ripe old age of 35 approaching, I don't have enough lifespan left to just waste my time. So the compromise now is, I like games that still give you prizes when you lose. So some of the newer Mega Man games, things drop little bolts when you're fighting through the stage, and when you lose, you keep your bolts. You can use those to buy extra health or extra lives or extra whatever to be like, oh, next time I fight this boss, I now have a full heal or 2 as a result of losing this stage a bunch of times.
Right.
For Monster Hunter, you should keep anything you picked up in that fight every time. Because it's like, yeah, no, you almost killed a Rathalos, you should get some stuff.
Right.
Because then it like kind of undercuts it. So my thoughts for lives is lives should be instant now. Your 1-up just gets you right back up when you die. And your game over brings you back like 15 minutes or so, but you get half the stuff you would have got normally had you won. It's kind of where I'm at. Like in Pokemon, for example, if I were to update it to my modern thoughts on lives, you would keep all the experience. If you killed 5 of Lance's Pokemon but the 6th, you'd keep all your experience, and it'd bring you back to Lance, not back to the start of the Elite Four. Although the boss of the game, you can be a little more tricky with it. And the thing is, Gen 1 Pokemon did that, I think. I think when you whited out, you still kept any experience for any Pokemon you knocked out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you kept any experience, you kept any items, but you just have to travel back from the Pokemon Center to wherever it was that you were going to. Then all the trainers that you ran across would also still be defeated.
Yeah, and it wasn't that far between these points.
Not usually, no.
So I think in modern game design, I wouldn't really change Pokemons. I think Pokemon had it. Although this Monster Sanctuary game I was playing recently, your punishment for losing a fight is you lose the fight, and then you'd have to refight them. You just get healed to full outside of fights, and you can switch out your roster whenever you want.
Right.
And they're like, we made these fights hard. Well, what happens if I lose the fight? Literally nothing. You just exit the fight animation, and you can just leave. And go do something else. Or you can try again if you want. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much perfect design. They also had platforming with no punishment other than you fell and you have to try and do the platforming again, which I think is the perfect punishment for a platformer.
I suppose so.
Well, like, even modern platformers, like, let's take Donkey Kong or Mario. Falling in a pit being instant death almost goes against some of their game design. I would have it, like, if you fall in a pit, I would have you respawn next to the pit and, like, lose some HP or shrink to Little Mario. Because instant death just
Mhm.
isn't really a thing in games anymore.
Well, yeah, but then, like you say, with cozy platformers, um, it's like there's no. I mean, I guess you're looking for a different rush because, like you say, you're looking for secrets rather than for precision platforming and feeling like awesome that you completed a difficult task. But also, then it becomes like when something is difficult, how do you reward the player?
Well, that's the trick, though, is it's about making that difficulty come in bursts now. So if we look at some of these modern platforms that did really well, like Super Meat Boy or Celeste or
Mm.
even Metroid Dread to a certain extent, is you're only clearing one screen or one room or like 4 rooms linked together at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And those rooms are hard as fuck. It might take you 100 times to
Right.
clear that room. But once you're through it, it's
Uh-huh.
done. It gets
Right.
that is much better difficulty curve than you clear 100 rooms and you die in room 99 and have to go back through all 100 of them.
Mm.
So you can absolutely give someone infinite lives in a platformer and give them that rush of intensity. You just have to make the thing they have to do match the challenge. Like, you make it that the boss is a big enough badass, and you're like, yeah, I get infinite tries to do this. But if he hits me 3 times, I'm just dead, and I have a butter knife, and he's Sephiroth. I better bring my A game. And like,
Right.
it's funny because like the hard games, like the Mega Man ones, I like to reference because they're recent, fresh on the memory. I was fighting like the second last boss on Mega Man 11, and I'm like, okay, I have like 10 lives stocked up, like 10 full heals. He's like, cool. I turn into bricks, fly across the screen, fall down from the screen, grab you, and throw you into lava. I'm like, okay, all right. You're not going to make me replay the stage because I bought a bunch of items from like giving me things. Nor should you have to, because I have to fight, like, I think it's Mega Man Zero. Infinite Lives is fair when you're fighting a falling space colony and the boss merges with it, and you're fighting him during atmospheric re-entry as the space colony is trying to punch you to death. Like, you're like, okay, even though he has to hit me 10 times, he has so much weaponage going on. It's the Dark
Mm.
Souls tactic. Like, Dark Souls, you technically have infinite tries. You just lose stuff.
Right.
And the
Mm.
newer Dark Souls actually have, like, the save spots more frequently placed,
That makes sense.
I think. Citation needed. So, yeah, that's where I'm at, is, like, the idea of the old school platformer getting game over and replaying everything just doesn't vibe with me anymore. And, like, save states just aren't aesthetically pleasing. Like, I'd rather
No.
it just, the game just have sensibly placed checkpoints.
But as a side note, I'd mentioned that the game that put me onto this topic was Donkey Kong Land. Um, I I really like Donkey Kong Land. Nostalgia from when I was younger. I think I probably played it when it came out, which was like 1994 or 1995.
You know, I love the classic Game Boy graphics, by the way, before they got colored, just the green on black. I don't know why. It just makes me happy.
Well, I had the Game Boy Pocket, which had the darker black and then the lighter background.
Yeah.
I kind of like the Game Boy Pocket personally, more nostalgia. But
Both reasonable.
the original Game Boy had more accessories, so I traded my Game Boy to my brother for my Game Boy Pocket to my brother for his Game Boy because he had the accessories. And then years later, he told me that he traded it because he accidentally peed on it.
You know, I'm not even going to follow that up with a comment. I'm going to just let that go.
Anyways, I beat original Donkey Kong Land 100% without using any internet FAQs or walkthroughs. Because I knew I could do it. I did it as a kid.
That's me with Mega Man
just-
X.
I was a little bit disappointed because that game in particular, apparently, excluding game overs, it only took me like just under 3 hours to complete. I was like, I really like this game, and lives are supposed to artificially increase playtime, but dang, I didn't realize it was that short.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Mega Man games are like 2 hours long if you're good at what you do.
Right.
But also, like, it's weird because I love to give rants that video games devs have gotten lazy in a lot of ways, and like a lot of games just aren't actually that much better because they like don't try and up the scope much. Like
Right.
Mario Wonder's like, look how fancy this is. I'm like, why does it have less stages than Super Mario World, and why don't they branch? And
Mm.
why does it have less power ups? It's like, well, no, it has more. It's like, it really doesn't, though.
Mm.
And that's like, the thing is, yeah, every Mega Man game is 8 stages, unless they feel like being saucy with it, and maybe they'll throw in some intermission stages.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, they just kept making the same game because it was doing good. So it's like,
Fair enough.
if I were to make a new Donkey Kong game, if I'm like, make Donkey Kong Land 4, you mad lad, I would definitely switch out lives with checkpoints. I would absolutely have banana shops more prevalent, where you could buy power-ups and upgrades, so if you fail a stage, you can exit and get new stuff.
Right.
And I'd make it have more levels than 1 through 3 combined. I'd probably include, as bonus stages, every level from 1, 2, 3 as hidden unlockables. It's like you could put the entirety of every Donkey Kong Country game in a new Donkey Kong Country game, if you wanted to.
Okay, well, just random side tangent.
It is what we do here when I talk to the silence.
When, firstly, maybe you actually know games that have done this, but what if instead of distinct stages, you actually had one large stage that was encompassing every other distinct area that would have been a stage before?
Yeah, they're called Metroidvanias. What are you talking about?
Is that really?
Did you play Metroid
You don't
Dread?
have distinct stages? Oh yeah, kid, Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread was pretty fun.
So I always have.
I was just imagining a Donkey Kong game that would use a Metroidvania style app.
So
I guess
I have mixed feelings on Metroidvanias. So the last Metroidvania I really liked was that Monster Sanctuary that broke into Pokemon fights instead of like actual Metroidvania fights. The problem I find with Metroidvanias is they usually design them to have a lot of backtracking.
Right.
Like by design. But also, so what I like about the Mega Man game stages is each stage is distinct. And as I was kind of saying, where I'm like, I like the like perfection of like jump in the air, cut a thing in half, dash, shoot it, kick up the wall, and throw a lightning bolt at an armadillo. The run based of, oh, we do these 8 separate stages has like a certain like perfectionism quality to it, where the Metroidvania is like a more methodic, slow and steady style game, just kind of by design. So like say we made a Mario Metroidvania, which I'm sure people have in the modding community, 1,000,000,000% chance.
Right.
Part of the novelty of Super Mario 3D World and what made it so sweet is each stage was so distinct that it was like, oh, I liked Super Mario 3D World more than I liked Odyssey. Odyssey, it would have been really easy to make it the 3D Metroidvania, aka the open world Breath of the Wild. All you'd have to do is link all those zones together around a globe, right?
Right.
Like, it wouldn't have actually been hard, and I'd bet money that the Switch 2 is going to have the first open world Mario game.
Huh.
Just feels obvious at this point. But there's a certain value to, like, doing the stages in a vacuum that I like. So it's like, if you want Donkey Kong Metroidvania, you absolutely could. I don't know if it would scratch the itch for me. I think I'd rather, like, go Donkey Kong, ton of stages, branching exits, and make it like just a massive web of stages.
That's true. That is one thing that Donkey Kong doesn't have a lot of, which is branching stages.
Or like the Metroidvania Donkey Kong game would be interesting, don't get me wrong. But I think for that to work, I would need characters to be what you unlock instead of power-ups like a normal Metroidvania. Like, you'd like find the Diddy barrel and just have Diddy and be able to swap to him for the rest of the game and go through your gas that way.
Right.
Because the Metroidvania design is, to reuse areas on the map, you have to have new abilities to come back to them. If you want to like more pull a Fire Emblem, like each stage is just attached, you'd have to either make them open world, like you'd either have to make them Metroidvania where you double back with new power-ups, or it'd just be like one really, really big stage. Because if you weren't going back to old areas and it weren't non-linear, then you're just making one super huge stage. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think I'm against it, but I do find that breaking up gameplay styles is my personal vibe. Like in
Mm,
Mega Man Zero, between the stages, you'd go around the base, talk to the mooks for a bit, upgrade your stuff. I think the
right.
camp is an important part of Monster Hunter. Like a Monster Hunter that was just, oh, you go out here and your goal is to kill all 50 monsters while you're out here at once.
Mm,
I think doesn't vary the gameplay enough. Like I kind of like the cat animation of cooking the meal and breaking up. Like I love the painting of the Gunpla. Could
right,
be a way
right.
to break up the action stages. Although the Last Gundam Breakers stages were the stages themselves are mediocre, but that's just a different quip.
Right. Well,
So
I mean, I think we've gone on enough tangents. Maybe it's time to find up the random question of the day.
if the concept of left suddenly ceased to exist in all forms, directional, political, metaphorical, what is an unexpected consequence that would ripple through your life?
The concept of left. Hmm. So you would be unable to turn left.
Thankfully, 3 rights is a U-turn.
Hmm. Well,
So I'll start with me a bit, if it's okay.
yeah.
So I can't do left and right anyway. Directionally, stay the same. I would love it politically because the analogy is too fucking simplistic. Because then
Mm,
people would actually have to like list their platforms instead of just putting it on an arbitrary ass axis.
right,
But
right.
as an unintended ripple, we just lost axes. We can go X and Y, but we can't. Like we. Oh man, that's rough. Humans love putting things into grids, and we've lost the ability. We have curves, but we can't like sort as arbitrarily left and right things. I hope it would just make us more complex life forms. Like we'd evolve better, even if we have to do 3 right turns to actually go the other direction from now till the end of time.
Hmm. The the concept of left, but not the ability to. Man, see that's
Thankfully, the Earth's a globe,
extrapolating.
so we're fine.
Well, no, I'm just like thinking like we in English we read from right to left.
Yeah, so we're switching to kanji.
Well, yeah, like are we going to have to start reading up and down? Does that mean
Yes.
that each page can only contain one line
No, we're
because you
gonna do
can't
the
go right?
arrival thing with the septipoids, where it's a circle, and you read it
Yeah.
non-linearly.
Ooh, you read it in a spiral.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man,
Hmm.
controllers. The Wiimote becomes a superior controller yet again.
Uh,
You know, I think Mario's fine as a game somehow in this scenario. There's no reason to ever go the other direction. A surprising number of games you would just play them as normal. It's actually
um,
kind of shocking how many games from the Super Nintendo era are fine.
okay, so a surprising ripple of not the concept of left disappearing, or maybe not surprising, but lefty loosey, righty tighty. Uh, we wouldn't be able to open any of our sauce bottles at work.
So I love the visual where you have to like stab the top of it with a knife to like break the seal.
Yeah, either the bottles are no longer resealable, or we just can't
I'm
open them.
loving that we've replaced all bottles with soda tab pulls. Just all of them. Just and then start pouring out your pineapple. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the exact kind of dumb consequence I'm sure they were looking for. Oh, this last one. Remember this question, and there's a disclaimer here: don't be racist.
Okay.
If colors had legal representation and could sue for how they've been historically used or misrepresented, which color would have the strongest case and what would its argument be? Note, we're talking primary rainbow colors.
Which color would have the strongest case for how it's been misrepresented?
Yeah. So, immediately, I am representing red. Because
Oh.
people are like, anger, stop, displeasure, blood. And I'm like, tomatoes, strawberries, fun, Christmas. Nah. Red is like such a soothing cinnamon happy color that has been co-opted by the warmongers of the world. They're like, red is intense. I'm like, pink isn't even a color. It's just chill red.
Just chill red.
It's like pink. You just have to move the saturation slider. You get light blue and blue. You don't just go from blue to blink. Man, this law case, I got Red's back here. We are suing so much for slander and damages. Although,
For
because it's
slander
you,
and
I could just
damages.
be like representing Orange and suing the crap out of you for just hate crimes. You're like, pumpkin is some bullshit. Both the fruit and the pie. Be apple or be nothing.
I do have a disdain for the color orange. But colors could sue, huh?
I feel
Well-
like purple has a pretty good case against the French.
So I think the color white and the color black, both, because when you're looking at color theory, you can have additive color theory or you can have subtractive color theory, and
You're on such like a thin razor's edge right now. We don't need lives to make this exciting.
No. The point is that black as a color isn't really a color. It's the absence of color. It's a placeholder for a mental placeholder for a lack of information. That visually like light information. But then in additive color theory, it's the combination of all colors. And so I think there's a lot of legal murk there about what exactly black is and why what does it actually represent, because is it nothing or is it everything? And if it's
And to go the exact
I don't know what
opposite
kind of legal.
direction.
And then the same thing for white, where it's like in additive color theory, white is the absence of color, where in subtractive color theory, white is the presence of all colors, right? Like, so it's like, I think there's a lot of I don't know exactly what you would sue for, but the misrepresentation of what they actually are, I think, would have lots of legal repercussions if they could sue.
To go the exact unintended direction where whoever sent us this question did not want me to go, white has such legal grounds to sue because human beings are not white. No person born on this earth. Can you hold up the color swatch of Snow White 00000 hex code, or is it FFFFFFF hex code, and have it match a human being? That person is dead. They are deceased. They're either deceased or have a podcast. Either way, they're not a person. So, like, if the color's suing, it's like, nuh-uh. You're beige. Fuck right off. That is my use of the F-bomb for this episode. I stand by it.
I think that's your second one, actually. But that doesn't really matter.
I just thought I'd get away with it. I really hope at least one listener, and possibly Aaron after I reinstate him to the family plan after we update that information, goes through it and counts the F-bombs to see if it was 1 or 2 or 3. Because at some point I just ranted about Bort for no reason, and it's entirely possible I snuck one in there.
Oh, yeah, it might be 3. Oof.
Oh man, do I hate Bort. Ugh, they're doing a Final Fantasy fight where 3 people are standing in a line on each side and bouncing. And with that, thank you for tuning in to Richard and Karl present Deep Space and Dragons, where we talked about lives in gaming. We talked about Bruno the dog, which I don't actually know if that went anywhere.
Brutus. Brutus
Thank you.
is the dog. Brutus and Pixie.
I don't think we actually went anywhere with that. I think you're like, and on that note, Webtoon. And I'm like, it's funny because we did a full episode on Webtoon.
That was the segue. It was anti-disestablishmentarianism to Korra, to Brutus and Pixie, pet foolery, to Webtoon, to paranoid mage to wrong way to use healing
It's
magic.
just so funny on our podcast to take that route when we were already at Webtoon. Right? Because you're like, that's how I ended up on Webtoon. That website you guys did a 2-hour episode on 2 weeks ago. And it's like, yeah, but you also just have that tab saved. Like,
Yeah, no. But the actual point was the admission that don't use us for facts because I said that Paranoid Mage, which I read on Webtoon, was a manhwa when in fact it is just a adaptation of a North
it
American
was
book
just
series.
so long to get there. I respect it so much. It's like when Shishomaru went to hell and back to get the other power on his sword, to then prove to his mother, to then smash the sword against Inuyasha's sword, to give Inuyasha a better sword, so he can then get his actual sword and his arm back. It's like such a journey for nothing to have actually accomplished anything. Such a journey. But yes, tune in, follow us. I don't know, maybe buy my book. I'm kind of hesitant now.
I don't have any books or anything to plug, so if you're gonna buy a book, you should probably buy his.
Although, also you can check out my Globe and Mail piece. That was actually pretty good. Bye.
That's true. Bye.
I get nothing for that. Literally nothing. In fact, the Globe and Mail may get something, so I made like $-, but whatever. I think newspapers should exist so we can continue to get the funnies at least.
Newspaper funnies.
That honestly, maybe that's what I should have got my master's in, just newspaper funnies and brought them back.
Oh, that'd be pretty funny.
That's literally where I cut off the episode, is it'd be pretty funny. Ha ha ha.